Hey, everybody. I know I always say this, but it's always true, isn't it? Boy, do I have a great interview for you. Can you imagine playing in two great bands that have totally different kinds of music? In this case, Loren Gold, a keyboardist, he currently plays not only for The Who, but Chicago. I mean, that is such diverse music, such a big chasm there of music, and none of it easy to play. And this guy does it. He's also played with people like Hilary Duff and Kenny Loggins, and I mean, gosh, just so many different people. And this guy plays it so easily, and no higher education training either, like at Juilliard or Berkeley or any of those highfalutin places. This guy self-taught somewhat. He had lessons, but not formal training like you would have at school. Guy's phenomenal. He's a monster on the keyboards. And so he's been on my bucket list for a long time to interview. And just between both of our schedules, it just never worked out quite well at all until recently. Even recently, we had illness, and we had the holidays, and we had tours, or he did, not me. And but now we finally got to talk. And man, it was a blast. You're never going to meet a sweeter, more nice, more gracious, more approachable guy than Loren Gold, and phenomenally talented. In case I didn't already tell you that. Check out his work with both The Who and Chicago. He's been with them for a bunch of years, and I just let this interview speak for itself. As always, if you don't mind, would you hit like on this thing and also subscribe if you haven't already? It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out tremendously. And also, of course, share this with your friends who love music in general and The Who and or Chicago in particular. So without any further ado, here is my first of what I hope are many more interviews to come with the phenomenal Loren Gold. Until next time, this is Randy Patterson with Boomerocity. Take care. Hello, Loren.
Hey, Randy, how are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Nice background.
I thought you might like that.
That's a
Were
lot of
you clicking
me.
it? Yeah. Well, hey, if you guys don't talk to me, nobody has any reason to dial in. So it's all
Uh,
about you guys, man. Whoever I talk to. So
I love it.
where are you clicking in from?
I'm clicking in from home in Los Angeles.
Oh, how I gotta ask a question that I'm sure you've been asked a million times. How close did the fires get to you?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's nice of you to ask. I was probably about I don't know, 8 miles or so from having to evacuate. So I was lucky. I was safe. Um, and but so many friends lost everything. It's just horrible. I can't even still can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, it's I can kind of relate to it. I live in the Smoky Mountains. I'm a couple miles up the road from Dollywood, and
Oh,
what
nice.
was it, 6, 7 years ago, something like that, we had a big fire here. And I
Okay.
lived next door to my dad and all that. My mom was alive at the time, and we had to evacuate, and it was scary. The fires got within 4/10 of a mile
Oh
of the
man.
property here, and it was scary. But we were spared, but a lot of people weren't.
Yeah.
And the way our fires were, the winds were blowing fireballs in all sorts of directions, and so there was no pattern. It was just very random. And
Right.
fortunately, nature has taken over, and you don't see a lot of the scars anymore. Most of the scars are gone, but
Sure.
I
Sure.
think it'll be a little bit different in Southern California there. I'm glad you were spared.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for asking. Yeah.
my pleasure. What I appreciate you taking the time. I know, gosh, you fought illness, you've been on the road, and you were just on the road. Who were you touring with, and who you are you about to go back on the road with?
So I was out with Chicago the past few weeks. I'm home right now. And I'm gonna go out with Chicago again. We have a residency starting in Las Vegas, which we
Hmm.
do every year, at the Venetian. So I'll be there in a couple weeks for a little bit, and then at the end of what month are we in? Every day
Uh,
Saturday in my world.
February.
We're in February. So yeah,
Yeah.
so after Vegas, I go straight to London to join the Who for a couple shows at Albert Hall.
Oh,
So
wow.
it'll
You've
be,
played there a time or two, haven't you?
I have, yeah, it's probably one of the top venues for me, yeah.
Is it really? I was going to ask you that. What would be second to the Royal Albert Hall?
Well, it's funny, I'm a big baseball fan. Grew up,
Ah,
loving baseball, and we played at Fenway Park once with the
yeah.
Who. So, there's so much history there. It's, it's holy ground, right? So
Yeah, for
we
sure.
we,
For
we
baseball
did a show
fans, for sure.
there and just being on the field. So that was, that if I actually had to take one, that would be my favorite venue. It's not really a venue, but Albert Hall's a proper iconic
Yeah,
venue, and
yeah.
it's in London.
And so many people have played there. Gosh, I mean, it's
Oh,
just,
that's just it. Literally everyone you can think of, all your favorite bands have played there.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And talking about the two bands you tour with, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak with you, Lauren, is you've got such a, I mean, looking at your career, you've had, you've played with Hillary Duff to Taylor Hicks and
Yeah.
Randy Moore and then Roger Daltrey, and now you bounce between The Who and Chicago. And I mean, how far apart can those two bands be? And yet you just very smoothly gravitate between the two and slip right in. I mean, that blows my mind. It really does. And that's I mean, here you have, the Who and their rock and their, they've had their musicals and all that. Then you have Chicago and all their intricacies and, what, 60 years now of playing. And the Who
Yeah.
is about that as well. I mean,
Correct.
golly, that's some talent, man. I salute you. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you.
So, and that confused me because when I first started following you, I was like, okay, that's the keyboardist for the Who. And then later I saw you were in Chicago and I was like, wait a minute. And then I started digging in to your career and it's like, holy crap. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about it. Was this something you planned or did you, I mean, talk to me about it. Is it difficult
Yeah, when
to,
I was yeah, when I was 5 years old, I said I'm gonna be in Chicago and the Who at the same time. Dreams do come true. No.
that's right.
I mean, you never know where things are gonna go, right?
Hmm.
Um, I certainly didn't plan it. That would have been amazing. But I guess, I've been with the Who, I've been with Roger for a while now, for like 15 years. So that was kind of,
Hmm.
I've been with them for a while, and Chicago came along um, at a time where I wasn't actually on the road, like I was home for a month or two, and I just kind of was called in to sub for Chicago to take over for somebody who was ill. Um, and then one thing led to another, and then you know here I am. I stayed on to become a band member of Chicago.
Hmm.
So it's I feel very blessed and fortunate to be playing this music. I mean, both bands are so iconic, and I grew up listening to classic rock. I had older siblings, so I knew the music. So
Right.
it's like I kind of knew what to bring to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's just there's so much there, and you've got to wrap your head and your fingers around it pretty quickly.
I can imagine. Now, how
Was
long
it
have you been with Chicago?
well, almost 4 years?
Wow.
There's a
Man.
joke that my friends and I have. That we always think that during one show, if I'm at Albert Hall with the Who, I might break into Saturday in the Park by accident, right? Or
That might
vice
be
versa.
a little bit of a contrast there.
Yeah, See, I told you we shouldn't have let him do it.
That's
They're playing Bob O'Reilly at Chicago concert.
yeah, right. And I've been privileged to see both bands. I saw the Who only once, and that was before I launched Boomerocity. And then I've
Yeah.
seen Chicago several times, and I think the last three times you were with them. So
Oh,
I think you guys are going to be about an hour from me here in another month or so. I'm supposed to be going to that show over in Cherokee, South Carolina,
oh, we'll have to visit while
North
I'm there.
Carolina.
Wonderful.
I'll make sure that we'll connect and maybe before the
Yeah.
show we can bump elbows or something. So the, do you I've got to ask this. I know that when there's guys who play with different bands, you got Steve Lukather, he's got Toto and he's got Ringo.
Yeah.
Um, you've got Mark Rivera who bounces between Billy Joel and Ringo.
Correct.
Um, do you, and there's others like that. I mean, so many of you talented men out there that get called from by the best of the best, wanting you to be part of their bands. Um, has there been conflicts for you? And I'm not looking for dirt. I'm not trying to go there, but I'm looking for how you resolve a scheduling conflict when you've got Roger
Yeah.
calling you on one line and Robert Lamb or you know uh, Jimmy Pankow or whoever calls you, Lee calls you and say, "Hey, we need you at these," and they're both the same dates. Have you run into
Sure.
that? And if so, how do you manage that
No, it's a
conflict?
good question. So that that presented itself when I first got into Chicago. Because when they first asked me to go out and well, I was available when I went out and did the first run. And then they said, hey, we want you to stay. We have another, here's the next run coming up, next leg, whatever you want. I'm like, I'd love to, but I already have, you know, agreed to do the Who tour. And they're like, no problem. And they were totally got it. They were so nice and accepting of that. Because I've been with the Who for a long time. So I went
Mhm,
out and did the Who and literally I called in a sub for Chicago.
mhm, mhm.
Brought them up to speed, worked with them for a while. So far it's
Wow.
been okay. It's worked out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's cool too. I mean, that to be for them to be that understanding, but then
Yeah.
to hold the spot for you. I mean, that's
Yeah.
impressive. I mean, now
Yeah.
you're still with them. Um,
Right.
there, with all this musical diversity that you've been involved with, all the artists I mentioned prior, then of course your main two being the Who in Chicago. And this may seem like a obvious question, but I suspect the answer is probably going to be kind of deep, and that is, has the musical diversity that you've been so heavily involved with, um, all across your career, but especially with these two bands, has that created any kind of creative creative surprises for you?
There's been challenges. I mean, there's been times where I've had to shred and dissect stuff more than other songs, if that's what you
Hmm.
mean. You know,
Yeah.
there's complex songs or structures with every group that I've been involved with. So,
Hmm.
um, you're not just going through the motions. So, I take everything seriously and try to do the best that I can. So I'm always learning something every time with everyone, you know.
What
I don't know if that
what
answers
was
your question.
Yeah, sure, of course. What and I try to come up with questions that I know it's probably impossible to come up with questions you've never been asked, but I try to come up with ones you've not been asked as much. So with your career, it's going to that posed the challenge for me. But w working with the Who and Roger and all that, what were the biggest surprises you ran into musically and even professionally working with them, whether it's recording, touring, whatever the case may be? When you first kind of got your feet wet with them and all that, what surprised you most?
Um, Well, with the Who, you're talking about the Who, correct?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, with the Who, it was, with Pete and Roger being behind them on stage, seeing them together on stage in front of an audience, it's so much power, so much intensity. Just the two of them, their presence and what they're giving out. Um, you know, I used to watch the early days, the kids are all right and all these live performances,
Mm.
and it's just epic power. And they literally bring that to the stage, just, the tension, their personalities, the way they deliver the music. It's incredible. So to witness that and to kind of fit in, weave my way in there somehow and finding the right spots, when to get in there and rock out with them, and when to just step back and let them go.
You kind of got into the Who by way of Roger, right? I think that's what you said.
Correct. Right.
Was there a transition issue going from doing working with Roger on his solo work and then getting into the Who? Was Pete? I mean, and again, any question I ask you, please understand, I'm not looking for I don't like getting into controversy.
No,
That's
it's
not
all
who I
good.
am. But was there a vibe or something where Pete's like, all right, this is Roger's guy. I may have my own guy, but that
Absolutely.
obviously
Right.
obviously he liked you because you're still there and he's a force
Right.
to be reckoned with, right? So how
Right.
did that all work out for you?
Well, I
I
was
mean,
very
what
comfortable with Roger at
Mhm.
that point. I'd been with Roger a few years by the time, I came into the Who. So of course there's like a whole new, now I gotta prove myself to Pete. And I was Roger's guy, of course.
Mhm. Mhm.
He did, I'd never worked with Pete before. He had heard good things about me, so I played with his brother in the band as well. Um, so there was some comfort there, but I'm kind of just like feeling it out and just, you know, you're hoping for the best. And sure enough, we rehearsed for a while. We did the first few shows, and then out of the blue on one day, he just wrapped his arms around me and gave me a big hug, and I felt welcomed. So that
Cool.
was nice.
Cool.
I don't think
I
I
know
ever
when
shook.
I talked to Matt Bissonette
Yeah,
last year, he and I exchange notes fairly regularly. But he was talking when I was interviewing him. He was telling me, he's on the Elton John's last tour, and he
right.
talked about getting a call from Elton after a show, one of the first shows, and he said, "Look, I appreciate that you're trying to do things exactly how they were in the past. Put a little bit of you in there. I want that." And I thought, Elton's a tough person to please. I've never spoken with him. I'd love to. He was one of my idols when I was in high school. But, there was that kind of thing where you had someone that was trying to get things note perfect to the past, and here Elton's going, no, bring in some of you into this. Was that like that for you in the Who?
Pete and Roger the same way. Yeah, they don't want
Very
to,
cool.
they don't want to just play the notes of the record.
Very
Especially,
cool.
I I am blessed to have a moment every night before Love Rain,
Hmm.
where I do a piano solo, and I have 2 minutes to do whatever I want, and they have literally given me the green light, and they just sit and they just watch me do it, and they don't know what I'm gonna play, and I always do something different because I like to torture myself. Um, I remember Pete saying, you can play the same thing every night if you want. I'm like, oh, that'd be too easy. You guys would get bored. So
Keep them on the edge of their seat,
yeah,
right?
so I read a new piece in my hotel room the day of show, and yeah, it was fun.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah.
So, same questions about Chicago. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not a musician. I mean, I was in some music programs in high school 100 years ago. I'm 65 now, but I was in concert choir. I took a little guitar, a little piano, had no talent for it. I gave it up, right? So instead, I interview all you guys who
you love it.
were,
Yeah.
yeah. So when I watch, from a layman's view, like me, or a fan's view, I look at Chicago and especially those real early
Mm.
albums. I mean, you guys just did that 50th anniversary of the Transit album, and which, by the way, my salute to the band on that. I mean, you guys brought in, Steve Vai and,
Yeah.
a whole slew of others. That was an incredible video to watch. And, but it reminded me of just how intricate and but tight they are. And that had to be some challenges for you, wasn't it, to pick up their catalog and learn it?
Well, it was mainly of the first show because I was alerted a day before that I was going to be playing.
Oh, crap. No pressure.
Oh crap is right. So, and if you know Chicago, like it, you know enough to know this is not 145.
No, no, it's
There's
not
a lot.
blues or anything
Yeah,
like that.
the first song alone, introductions, it's like, okay, so, a little bit of panic, but all right, we're gonna figure this out. So of course I'm just downloading chart. I mean, there's no way I'm gonna learn 2.5 hours worth of music in 24 hours of Chicago songs. So I literally just shredded around the clock, downloaded charts, put it on an iPad, and all the David Foster stuff, inspiration, and hard to say I'm sorry and all this. And then, I mean, somehow I got through it.
Did you have to wear like the pins or something for those first couple of shows? I mean, I honestly, this is crazy that you told that story because I've had nightmares. Again, I'm not a musician, nowhere close to it. I don't even, I love guitars, but I like them for their looks and their shape. I cannot play anything. But I've had these dreams where I've been hired to play for, different people. And I said, yeah, sure. And then I go, hold it. Why the crap did I say that? Because I can't play anything. But they went, and it's night of the show, and I'm stepping on stage. And I mean, the one that come to mind, I dreamed I was going to go play with Joe Bonamassa. It's like, geez, So I say that only to say that I can only imagine. I mean, you had to be a bundle of nerves. Or what did you do to psych yourself up to get through those first couple of nights like that on such short notice?
You know what? I couldn't overthink it. I just had to show up and just go for it. I just had to go for it. Obviously I focused on the bigger numbers. That was just me. It's like that's where I spend the majority of my time.
Hmm.
Uh, but I plowed through it, and as I'm playing these songs that I don't know, but I know, you know, it's like I know them, but I don't know them yet. So
Yeah.
it's so you're playing through, just you and me. All right, I know the song. Oh, I didn't know that chord was in there. It's like so it was fine. I
Hmm.
literally relied heavily on the charts that I made those first few shows.
Hmm.
And it just the crazy thing about that first one too is Chicago, they play so much, we don't sound check. So we walk up on stage and boom. So I don't know what my mix is going to be like. I don't know. It's just like there were some issues there that we had to fix on the fly, which is
Hmm.
totally normal.
Yeah.
Uh, that first show was a bit insane.
I can imagine. I've interviewed, gosh, when I first launched Boomerocity, first couple of years, I did an email interview with Robert, and then over the
Yeah.
last few years, I've interviewed Jimmy and Lee,
Oh,
and
great.
they're all great guys. To me,
Yeah.
they wouldn't know me from Adam, but they always very gracious to me and stuff. But I did watch the documentaries on them, and so they're. I mean,
Great.
I would imagine amongst the band, it's kind of tough to be in there. I mean, everybody's got to be on their game at
Oh,
all
yeah.
times, and so for you to be able to come in like that, and first of all, for them to even ask you, and
Yeah.
then for you to survive that
Right.
crunch that they put you under, I mean, it speaks to your talent and how you hit them, and so same question that I asked about, Pete welcoming you into the band. How was it for you transitioning into as a regular member of Chicago?
It was they welcomed me right out of the gate. It was so lovely. I mean, all three of them. I mean, right away, like we sat in their hotel room the night before. I said, "All right, guys, what's going on?" And like, "Can you play tomorrow night?" I'm like, "Okay." Anyways, but I played a little bit, and they're like, "It's gonna be great," and you sound great, blah blah blah. And they were so kind, and I mean, there's no weirdness and everything. They just accepted me as one of, as a
Wow.
band member.
I would say, and I forgot one other I interviewed with the band when Keith was with the band. I think he was gone before you joined him when he
It
was
was
on
in
guitar.
when I did that first run.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal guitar player. I mean, good
Yes.
Lord. But,
Yes.
he had to step in Terry's shoes,
Right.
and then you're coming in. And correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've watched on the videos and the shows that I was in, before I realized who you were at the first show, but after
Yeah.
that, I knew who you were. It appears to me that you're kind of doing most of the heavy lifting when it comes to the keyboards. I know Robert still plays, but you're doing most of the stuff that used to be all on his shoulders. Is that correct?
For the most part, I'm doing the big piano numbers and on
Yeah,
organs. Yeah.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah. They're and that's neither here nor there about Robert, but I mean, his voice is still there. The guys are
Oh,
still, their
Robert.
chops are still, and they're not young guys. I mean, I'm a little bit younger than them, but not by much. And so I know how I would feel being on the road as much as you guys tour. But these guys not only hold up, but they're still at the top of their game from all appearances
Absolutely.
and all
Well, they
sounds.
they love what they really just love it so much. I see it on their faces. They're pumped before every show. They're
That's
not
cool.
dialing it in. They love it. They take pride in it. If anything's not feeling right, they're out there warming up and practicing and rehearsing. That I mean, they love meeting the fans and signing everything. I mean, it's admirable. It's just inspiring, you know?
Cool. Now,
Yeah.
the same question for about Chicago again as it was for the Who. What was the biggest surprise for you sliding into that slot musically? I mean, what, and then maybe as a second part of that question, is there a song when they say, "All right, this is on the set list tonight," and you go, "Ah, crap, I hate playing that because it's so hard," or anything? I mean, I say that jokingly, but is both. What's the biggest surprise and what's the toughest song of theirs that you've had to take on?
There's not one song I say, crap, I wish we weren't playing this because they're all great songs. I mean, there's so many more I'd be happy to do as well. I mean, such a deep catalog, as you know.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't get one of those bands, you just can't play every song.
Right.
Someone's gonna go home, saying, God, I wish they'd played, but you give them as much as you can,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, it's such a joy. It's such a joy, and they're it's it's been great to dissect those songs, even especially the David Foster ones, which are so
Yeah.
brilliant. And then the early stuff,
Hmm.
the jazz voicings, the chords, just unexpected changes with these pop melodies. I mean, they're Chicago for a reason, they've been
Yep.
around this
That's right.
for a few.
Now, these
They're
next
deep cuts.
these next couple of questions I'm going to ask you typically are questions that are asked at the beginning of an interview, but I purposely wanted to ask them at the end because of all this complexity between the two bands and the other artists you've worked with. What was your musical background before all this? When did you start playing? What were your influences? All those basic questions that
Sure.
when you
Yeah.
that you get asked, but
Yeah.
what got you to those points of where you're now looked to by the Who and by Chicago?
Right. Well, started like many other kids. My mom put me in piano lessons when I was 6, group lessons. Um, I continued to play. I took a private teacher come to the house. There was nothing, I wasn't anything special. I just really enjoyed it. At least I don't think I was. Um, I played my sixth grade graduation and everyone was like blown away at that age. But in
Cool.
my mind, I was like, oh, it was all right.
Now I'm just going to ask you, I'm old, so I can ask you this, I think. You're pretty young compared to who you're playing for, right? You're not in
Thank
your 60s or 70s. I'm going to guess
No, no,
you're
no,
what,
no,
in
no.
your 30s?
I like how this interview's going. This is fantastic. Next
I'm
question.
not sucking up. It's a genuine question there. I mean, I think
Thank
it's
you.
obvious you're younger, but I mean, but for you to
Well,
be
I
getting
I drink
this
my
message,
matcha tea, which does all wonders.
well, I'm drinking LaCroix, so
But literally, I had piano lessons. There was always music around the house. Everyone, I had siblings. Everyone played a little bit. There was the Beatle albums, which just floored me, like so many people. You know, I listened to the Beatles. I'm like, it was like a bolt of freaking lightning, and like that's what I want to do. I want to be Paul McCartney, right?
yeah,
Meaning,
everybody did.
yeah, right. Meaning, like, it spoke to me, and
Mhm,
there wasn't anything else I wanted to do at that point. So I grew
mhm.
up on, just on classic rock. Um, older my brothers and stuff, and I loved it. So I used to listen to the Who. I went to go see the Who, as a kid. I stood in line to get tickets. It was like all my friends. Um, so that was it. I didn't go to school. I didn't get training. I just developed my ear over the years and
Wow.
listened to so much music, and I could I know or I knew what I liked and what sounded good, and I could pick out stuff I didn't like. And it just I worked a lot on my own, after learning the basics. I played classical as a kid and did all the hand
Mhm.
and exercises and all that stuff. But I didn't get a degree or anything like that. I just
Wow.
I
Now that surprises
school
me because
school of hard knocks.
I figured you're going to say Berkeley or Juilliard or something. Yeah.
They wouldn't have
Wow.
let me in.
So, so pulling out of away from these bands and all these people you have worked with, two-part question.
Yeah.
What, I mean, obviously you do other work when you're in between gigs. I imagine you get pulled into this studio, people wanting you to,
Now and then,
be a
sure. Yeah.
hired gun for their albums or,
I do a lot of
other
studio
type of
work from home, which is great. I have a nice setup. I can track for people here.
very cool.
Yeah.
What two part what haven't you done and who haven't you played with that before your career is over, which is going to be a long time from now, that you hope to be able to play with or a project you would like to do?
Oh man. I mean, all the greats, who wouldn't want to play with one of the greats, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I've been so blessed and I don't, I'm grateful for who I play with and I've never made a hole in one, so I'd like to do that.
Everybody would.
Uh,
So, but I thought of something. I didn't write this down. I should have thought of this earlier.
yeah, go for it.
Since you've been with Chicago and you've mentioned Foster quite a bit, Foster's a tough cookie. I know there was a little bit of friction between him and Chicago and all that. But have you ran into him on all this with your Chicago work? And
No,
what has he said, if you don't mind me asking?
I've never met him.
Oh, you never met him. Okay, I
No,
thought you said you
for
had.
whatever, no, for whatever reason, we just haven't been in the same room at the same time. So I've never had any kind of interaction.
Ah, well, that's
Yeah.
okay. That would be interesting if you
Yeah.
did. So,
Yeah.
but what's on your itinerary for the rest of the year? I know that, like I said, you're going to be playing in my neck of the woods at least once, and I've heard rumblings you may be actually hitting Knoxville as well, which is as close to me, but in a different
Sure.
direction.
Yeah.
That's with Chicago. So what's going on with them, with you and them, and with the Who this year in 2025?
So we have a pretty good calendar with Chicago. Always working a lot with them. So we have dates that they've announced. I'm sure there'll be more. And then I have the Who shows in London, which I'd mentioned, and then we have a couple shows in Italy this summer. So, we'll just see how it plays out. But it's going to be a busy year.
Wow. Well, good deal. When it's all said and done, man, how do you want to be remembered, and what do you hope your legacy is?
Oh man. Never been asked that.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
I
I don't,
figured that's going to be one of those
maybe,
million times you've answered it or
maybe I
something.
have, and maybe I have. I don't know. Um, just someone with a good heart who cares about people, and played well
Mhm.
and cared about others and animals and.
Well, I can attest to that, just not only musically, which everybody's got to see, but I just know in our interactions, you've been very gracious, very kind, approachable. And I look forward to meeting you, hopefully in Cherokee or in Knoxville or wherever we can cross paths there. But
I look forward to that as well.
I've just, you've been on my list to want to talk to for a very long time, and I'm glad we finally are able to make it. Look, if you ever have a solo project or another project that you're working on that you want to get the word out. I mean, I'm not Rolling Stone magazine, thank God, but I
Right.
do have a good global following, and I'd love to be a part of getting the word out there. So please let me know, or if I see rumblings of it, I'll reach out to you. But I'd like to help you out any way I can because I really love what you do with these guys, and I admire your talent as somebody who can't play chopsticks. So,
I
but
appreciate that. Very kind of you. Thank you.
no. Well, listen, you get some rest, and I'll see you down the road, and I'll let you know when this thing posts, okay?
Sounds great. Really
All
nice to
right, my
talk to
friend. Likewise. Take care, my friend.
you. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been another stellar episode of Boomerocity with your host, producer, and friend, Randy Patterson. The theme music is Roll the Dice by our good friend Quentin Hope, and all rights reserved and used by permission, of course. Post-production is done by Cardinal Sins Productions. The Boomerocity name, logo, and content is copyright protected, so all segments may only be used with written consent by Boomerocity and or its assignees. You should direct your inquiries to input@boomerocity.com, and the copyright is 2025.